Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. And today's episode look back, we are going to be looking at episode 10, which is called David's Mum. And the idea behind this episode was that the first 9 episodes, that there was very little in a way of interaction with women. In the last episode you had a couple with the colleagues of Mr. Daz and Nick, but nothing where they've become a focal point of the series. And I won't lie, it was the case that the idea of doing this episode and the idea of the way that David's mum was created was so that through the thumbnail it could try and gain a little bit more traction to the show, for the simple reason is that if you've got a thumbnail that's got a picture of Mr. Daz or David on the front, it's not going to get as many clicks as a thumbnail with David's mum. And it proved my point in this, because the episode did actually gain a lot more subscribers and a lot more viewers through a lot more people clicking on that thumbnail. The click-through rate was a lot higher for it, and even the watch retention was a lot higher for it, because David's mum is not featured right at the beginning. So I think people carried on watching to see what she'd bring to the show and what she'd do in the show. But we'll talk about it as we go on a bit further. But for now, let's just get into it. Please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. What the hell? Why is David asleep on the sofa? Mr. Daz, do you want to explain this?
Sure. That is David. He is asleep. Sleep is something that us humans do for a majority of our lives.
Yeah, haha. Why is he sleeping on our sofa?
Well, he called last night and said that he had an argument with his mum and needed somewhere to sleep.
So you told him he could stay here?
No, I just said I wish there was something I could do to help, and 10 minutes later he turned up at the door with a bag of clothing.
No, Cindy. No, I'm ticklish there. No, stop it.
Well, he can't stay here. We don't have enough space.
Okay, well when he wakes up you can tell him to leave. I think there's an old TV box in the storage area that he can use as a new home.
Why do I have to tell him?
Because you want him to leave.
Fine, someone has to be the bad guy. David, wake up.
Oh, you can't wait until he's woken up naturally. You're so mean.
I'm not mean, we have to go to work soon. I don't want him to be here when I get home.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not as if you were an unwelcome guest when you came to live here.
What was that?
Oh, sorry. I said it's not as if you were an unwelcome guest when you came to live here.
So, first of all, I love the way that Mr. Daz goes, even though I wrote it and I created it, but the way that Mr. Daz is, that even though he reminds me a lot of how my dad is, that he also reminds me a lot of the way that I would react to some people in certain ways. That the difference is that with me, that I've always been able to do it, that I've got a sense of humour that people will know when I'm joking and when I'm not. That even if I'm doing it in a rude way or in a sarcastic way, that people are always able to tell if I am just joking around or if I'm serious. And that's what I kind of wanted to give to Mr. Daz a bit, and that's why I've done it there with the fact that he'll repeat it but louder. Now the issue that I have with that part is that if we go back a little bit with Mr. Daz, when he was saying it to Nick, that he's not even looking at him. And these are the things that it annoys me so much when I watch it, because it makes me think that if you've got a new viewer that's found this episode through search or through suggested or whatever, and they click on and then they watch it up to this point, say they get into it and they think, oh, what's going to happen? Like, David's asleep on the sofa. They want to know what's going to happen. And then they come to this part and you got Mr. Daz, that he's being funny and he's being sarcastic back to Nick. But that one little thing of him talking to Nick like that, but looking into no man's land, that who knows where he's looking, who knows what he's looking at, but it doesn't look good. And in my mind, that is what can put a load of people off. And even for me, if I was watching a new show that I'd come across and I spotted things like this, they're things that would have me sitting there thinking that why would he be looking further away if he's talking directly to him in a way that he is? And I mentioned him in the first episode, but there is a guy that I linked in the first episode, and he does a lot of his animations with C4D and that, but he nitpicks a lot on the things that I do, and I'm not quite sure if he was watching and commenting on these episodes when they first came out, but he would have spotted that straight away, and it would have helped me going through like into newer episodes. But these sort of things happen quite a lot in season one, and they're the sort of things that I tried my hardest to make sure didn't happen. And even down to certain things like with the actual character, that if they're just standing there looking, to make sure that they're not too still, that they're moving, even if it's just a little bit, but when the camera's on them you can see that they're moving, and that was the idea. So there is a lot of things in season one that I have improved upon in season two. Not perfectly, not completely. I do still make a lot of mistakes, but even just sitting here and going through these now, it does irritate the crap out of me that I would make a scene like this, and I would have watched this back. I would have created this scene and I would have watched it back, but at the time I didn't notice that. And I can sit here and use all the excuses that I like, that when I've created season one was created on a laptop with a laptop screen, so it's not a big screen, but it still doesn't make a difference. This should have been noticed. That it's laziness that this wasn't noticed and this wasn't fixed, and it is such an easy thing to fix.
Yeah, well, I'll pay rent for that room. Well, get David to pay rent for the sofa.
No, he has to go. David, wake up.
Wow, someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Oh, morning, Nick.
Morning, David. I'm afraid you have to...
Your lunch is in the fridge. I didn't know what you liked, so I made you 3 different kinds of sandwiches.
Oh, thank you. You didn't have to do that.
Well, yes, I did. I will also do some washing while you and Mr. Daz are at work, so if you have any dirty clothes, just leave them on the floor in the bathroom.
Oh, it would be nice not to have to do that when I come home.
Yeah, Mr. Daz also wants me to go and do some shopping. What would you like me to cook you for dinner tonight?
Oh, well, I'd love to have a shepherd's pie.
Okay, I will cook that for you then.
Thank you. So with that, for the majority of people, that, like, for me personally, that if I woke up in the morning and someone was asleep on my sofa and I wanted them out, my mind wouldn't be changed because of what they can do for me. That the way I am is that I like peace and quiet. I grew up in a house where it was one in, one out all the time. Like, we'd always have visitors, whether it was aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, whatever. But because I've got a big family anyway, and we had so many people coming in and out, I love my peace and quiet. And like, in my house now, we don't get a lot of visitors. Like, we have carers and that come in for the 2 disabled boys, but we don't have a lot of visitors, and I love it. So in this situation, it would be the case that if I woke up and someone was on my sofa and they said, "Oh, I've made you lunch and I can do your dinner," and that, in my mind it was like, yeah, you still have to go. But I wanted to do it in this so that it shows how the mind can be changed so quickly with a little bit of manipulation. That David comes across as a stupid person, but he's not. His smartness to the point where he knows that Nick's not going to want him there, but he also knows how to get around Nick. And I think that's, when it comes to like progressive storylines, I think that's one thing with David that like I've enjoyed, because even though he is seen as a stupid person and not all that bright, but he's got more. He's a lot cleverer than people think, and you're going to see that in future episodes when like he explains what he's studied in the past and why he doesn't work and why he works for Mr. Daz. And also there's another episode where he wants a pay rise from Mr. Daz and things like that, where you'll see the clever side of him. But the only thing that I do is, like, in the episode More Pay, That's the Way, where David wants the pay rise, there's a twist to it at the end with Mr. Daz, and it's the reality of the situation that creeps up then. But yeah, the storyline with David, and it's not finished, that even though people got to know more about David, that it's not finished. There's a lot more storylines to come up in future episodes with David, where he will eventually leave his job to go on to do something else, and he does have a bit of luck further down the line. And it's interesting the way that happens, and then the way things come full circle again for him to end up back at square one. So yeah, the David character is an interesting one, especially storyline wise and things that you can do with it.
Okay, so I may have jumped the gun a little bit wanting David to leave. He's made me lunch for work, gonna do my washing while I'm gone, and have dinner ready for me for when I get home. I could get used to this. To be honest, I started to feel like Mr. Daz's butler. He doesn't really do much for himself and always seems to want me to do it all when David's not here. Now I can come home from work and put my feet up for a bit while David does it all. So what do you think the argument between David and his mum was about? Nick, listen, I'm the kind of person that doesn't give a toss about others. If David had an argument with his mum, then he can sort it out. I'm not about to be an agony uncle or anything like that. Alright, calm down. Ain't you curious in the slightest? Well, no. Okay. Have you ever met his mum? No, I've met a couple of his sisters and one of his brothers, but every time I've been to his apartment, his mum's always been working. So you have no idea what she looks like? Well, based on what her kids look like, I'm assuming she doesn't get many looks. You can't.
So, this whole conversation in the car from Mr. Daz's point of view is my dad, and he is the sort of person that my dad won't pay no interest in what your family's like, what's going on in your life and things like that. If you was to go to my dad and say, oh, this is the problem, that's the problem, his answer would be, yeah, go and speak to your mother, or go speak to... he doesn't get involved with my dad. That he's got it in his mind, the things that he wants to do. He wants to watch TV. He wants to listen to his Elvis Presley. He wants to sit there on eBay and look at different things that he can buy. But if you go to him with an issue, if you go to him with a problem, he's going to tell you to get lost quicker than you can finish a sentence. So this part of Mr. Daz, this personality side of Mr. Daz, is my own dad down to a T.
No, but that's what I believe. That's just because you're a mean person. Why am I a mean person? Is it because I don't get involved in other people's domestics? Am I mean because I'm set in my own ways and don't like people trying to change that? Well, no, it's the way you talk to people and treat people. You can be very rude and abrupt. Yeah, well, if you don't like it, you can always find somewhere else to live and get someone else to drive you to work every day. Oh, no, I never meant me. No, of course you didn't. I'm just saying you could make more of an effort to be nicer to people. Yeah, and you can check out the best way to roll after being kicked out of a moving car.
Hi, Mr. Daz. Your dinner is ready and waiting for you on the sofa. And Nick, I've prepared your dinner for you to eat at the table.
Thank you, David. That is much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Mr. Daz, ain't you going to thank David for cooking for us? No, he should be thanking me for giving him a job and a place to sleep.
Thank you, Mr. Daz.
You're welcome, David. Seriously? Nick, I don't want to hear it. Just shut up and eat your dinner. Don't look at me like that. I don't know what's been going on with me lately. I feel like there's something missing in my life and I can't figure out what. It's definitely not Nick and David. Not long before I moved here, I was dating a woman named Emma. We got on so well together and I thought we were both happy. Turns out it was only me. She wanted me to do all these different things that would take me out of my comfort zone and I just wasn't interested. For me, a good night is all about getting a takeaway and watching a movie while cuddled up on the sofa. For her, it was all about trying different foods from around the world, travelling and all that crap. Why would I want to go out and do all of that when I have the Just Eat app? I can get any food from anywhere in the world at my doorstep in less than an hour. I don't know. She just didn't understand me.
A couple of things. It's actually amazing to think that, like, when I was writing these episodes, it wasn't written in a way that I wanted the personality of someone else in there. That I had it in my mind that what I wanted Mr. Daz's personality to be in the direction that he's going to go within, like, the first few seasons. But it actually amazes me to watch it back and think that how much goes into the show is based on things that I've witnessed over the years. And even down to this, I know I talk a lot about my dad with these shows. It's because I put a lot of things in that remind me of the things that he does. With my dad, he's a home bum. That there is nowhere in this world that he'd rather be than at home, and he won't go out and do nothing. That my mum could turn around to him and say, "Let's go to the cinema. Let's go to let's go to a restaurant. Even like let's go bingo." He's always got a way out of it that he doesn't have to go. That if his way is that no, we'll just stay home. Why go and spend that much money at a cinema when we can stay home and watch a film at home? And like, why get a takeaway when you can just get up and cook for me? So yeah, it's just amazing that how much of my dad that I see in this show. And like the second thing that I wanted to say with Mr. Daz, that another reason why I wanted to do this episode is because it doesn't matter what kind of person you are, everybody has a vulnerable side, and I wanted that to slowly creep through, and it's going to get to a point. I mean, I'm creating an episode today which sees Mr. Daz go back to his old apartment and things like that, and it will show his more vulnerable side and the side of him where he's not just this rude and arrogant person that thinks the world evolves around him. There's a lot more going on as can't get my words out. There's a lot more going on in his brain that he's not happy with, and a lot of it is life in general. That the Mr. Daz character, he is in his 30s, so it's going to come to a point where you start to think, right, I need to meet someone, get married, have kids, have a life that most people in this life set out to have. So that's where the character progression comes in. And if you've watched the show from the beginning, that'll be the interesting part, because even though his rudeness and his arrogance and things like that are always going to be there, because that's the character that I want him to be for so many different reasons, you will start seeing another side to him where he desires more from life than what he has right now.
David have decided to rent a movie for tonight and have a lads' night in with a telly. What do you think, Mr. Daz?
Oh, yes. What are we watching? Die Hard? Fast and the Furious?
No, we're going to go with a classic.
Oh, okay. What are we watching?
The Sound of Music.
Really? You want me to sit and watch a musical?
Yeah, it's a classic.
No, thank you. Hello? Yeah, he's here. Okay, see you soon. David, your mum's on her way, so pack up your crap.
I hate the part like with the phones, that he's pulled the phone out of his pocket and things like that, which is fine because he's gone to his back pocket. And like, for people that don't animate, what you don't know is that at the start of this scene when Mr. Daz walks in, that phone is in his hand, it's just hidden, and all you do is that you're making it invisible throughout the scene, and then when he goes to his back pocket, you're just changing an option to make it visible. The only issue that I have with it is that, like, when he pressed the phone to answer it, his finger went straight through the phone, and then when he held the phone up, his fingers were still going through it. So they're things that I had to make sure that I worked a lot on, and I had to make sure that didn't keep happening. And the phones are not really used that much in episodes because apart from the three in the apartment, there's not really many people around that they speak to. So the phone only comes out now and then. And you can guarantee that I will always make some kind of mistake with the phones. It will always be that a finger goes through, or the phone's going through the palm of the hand or whatever. The mistakes will always be there. But I'm trying.
My mum is coming to get me. I don't really want to go back home. I walked in on my mum having fun with the postman. It came as a bit of a shock. I mean, he was supposed to be delivering packages and not giving my mum his package. I called her things that I shouldn't have called her. I do feel bad about saying things like that about my mum, but someone had to. Things might get a little bit awkward when she gets here.
So for that part, this is how my brain works. That whether people pick up on it or not is a different matter. But so I've done it from episode 1 that I've wanted to get the interview process in. So if one of the characters has something to say, then Mr. Daz will go to his room, David will go to his room. But David doesn't live there, so he had nowhere to do that interview side. So for me, I personally found it funny that if he wants to do an interview, you just know in the back of your mind, Mr. Daz has said to him, like, if you want to talk to the camera, you go in the bathroom. You're not going to use my room or Nick's room, and we're not going to leave the living room. So the only place you can do it is in the bathroom. Another side to it is that, like, that's where I kind of feel that the humour side of David comes out, and the smartness with his words. So he's turned around and said, like, he's found his mum at home with the postman, and the postman is supposed to be delivering packages and not giving his mum his package. It's just like a clever twist on humour, and whether people pick up on that or not is a different matter. But that's the kind of route that I went with David.
David, your mum's here. Get your stuff and go home.
Okay, but I need to speak to her first before I go back home.
Oh, okay. There's a cafe down the road. Go there.
Mr. Daz, stop being so horrible. David, take her to my room and speak to her there.
I love the sense of humour of Mr. Daz. That it's just something that, like, I can sit and watch it back. And I mean, I've watched a lot of these episodes with other people, that, like, with, like, my wife and my daughter and things like that, and I've noticed that a majority of the humour in this show does come from Mr. Daz and the way that he speaks and the way that he is. And I think the reason why the people that I sit and watch it with tend to laugh a lot more over it is because it's the sort of sense of humour that the area that I was brought up in. And, like, I was brought up in East London, so you think Cockney and things like that, and the way that people respond to others is very common for the way I was brought up. And, like, I know that I've got viewers from different countries and things like that, so whether they pick up on these sort of things or not, I'm not sure. But I just loved some of the comebacks that Mr. Daz has to things that David or Nick asks, and even down to this scene now. Like, this is the introduction of David's mum, and for the way Mr. Daz reacts, I might be wrong. The thing is that it might just be my weird brain that picks up on things like these and finds it funny. But my wife will tell you, she always says to me that I'm the sort of person that I laugh at absolutely anything. But yeah, there's just certain things with Mr. Daz and the way he acts and the way he speaks that, even though I created it and I've watched it back a few times and recorded it or whatever, but I'll still find it funny.
Thank you, Nick.
Wow.
Oh my God, David, is this your mum?
Yeah, this is Mummy.
Yes, she is. Come on in, have a seat.
Thank you.
Can I get you anything? Tea, coffee, wine, engagement ring?
Sorry.
Oh, nothing. I'll leave you to talk to David. So that's David's mum, huh? She is a stunner. I've been feeling like there's something missing in my life, and I think she just rang my doorbell. Oh, I think I'm in love. I'm wondering why the hell David's dad walked out on her. I would have just took her with me and left the kids behind.
So this kind of sense of humour, that these are the things that when I'm writing, I have to try and think of things that I can say in ways that are funny and clever, that it's not pushing it too far. So, like, for example, that with this with this part with Mr. Daz, that when I was writing this, I had no idea. Right, so to do this, let me take you through the writing process a little bit. So the way I do it is I will get an idea for an episode in my head, and everything goes on a spreadsheet. So I'll try and list it out episode by episode of what I'm going to do next. Now, for example, with this episode, I got the idea and thought, right, I can introduce David's mum to the show. That will be an idea. But from that, I had nothing else. And the way I do it is, on the day that I want to create the show, or the night before, I will open Microsoft Word and I will just start writing. So there's no scene outline, there's no like notes or anything of what needs to go into this episode or not. It's just basically thinking back to ideas that I've had for the episode, and that'll be it. This episode would have been written in about 20 minutes, and it's just something that it's just the way that I've always been when it comes to writing. I will think, right, scene one is this, and as soon as I start typing, I just go and go and go and go and go until I reach page 7 or 8. that's when I know the cut-off point is, because I want episodes to be around 10 minutes long. So that's when I know, right, this is where I need to stop. This is where it needs to be. And then what I'll do is I won't even read back fully. I'll just glance through to see what I've done, like different scene-wise, and see if there's anything that I want to take out and put in. But the writing process for each episode is usually around about 20 to 30 minutes. And it's just from scratch. It's on the fly. I think if I had more time to think about the episodes that I want to do, write notes and things like that, I think a lot of things that I put in, like that bit, for example, when Mr. Dazzy turned around and said that, like, if I was their dad, I would have just took her and left the kids. That would have been put in just as I was typing. And what I do is I kind of space out when I write. So I'll start writing, I'll start typing, but I'm not thinking about anything else other than the script. And by the time I'm finished, the reason why I have to read it back is because sometimes I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's like I'll write this scene and then carry on writing the rest. And by the time I've finished it, because it's a load of information in a very short amount of time, I kind of forget what I've written. And that's where the idea is that I'll read back through it. And I remember writing this one, and I remember reading back through it and seeing this part that I just wrote, and I just started laughing at it, because even though it's come from my brain, I've put it in, but by the time I got to the end, I've either forgotten it or I haven't really like processed the idea of how funny it is at the time. But yeah, these are little things that I'm a very weird person. The way that my brain works is very strange, but so far so good. It's been working well.
David's mum. Oh, I didn't even realise how beautiful she was. For me, I look past the outer beauty and look for the inner beauty. I want someone who can match me intellectually and not just eye candy. I'm not saying that she's not beautiful. Everyone is in their own way. It's just some stand out more than others.
Thank you for letting me stay, Mr. Daz. I'm going to go home now with my mum.
What's the rush, David? Why don't you both stay for dinner?
Well, my brothers and sisters are at home and they will need their dinners too.
Don't worry about them. I'm sure they'll survive for a few hours.
Mr. Daz, you couldn't wait for David to leave and now you want them both to stay for dinner. What's changed your mind?
Oh, nothing. It's just something you said earlier about being a better host, and you're right. I shouldn't be so rude to people. I just want to make amends.
Ah, well, it's good that you listen then. Please, why don't you both stay for dinner and Mr. Daz will order a takeaway for the other kids at home?
Oh, will I now, you cheeky bastard? Oh, yeah, of course I can.
No, it's fine. We will just go home, but thank you for the offer.
Okay, you're welcome here any time, David. And don't forget to bring your mum.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
So, as much as I enjoyed creating this episode, and like even the way it came out, that there's a few parts in it that I would have changed, especially like the animation side of things, like I said at the beginning, with like the way where Mr. Daz is looking and the phone and everything. But like overall, I thought this episode came out really well. One thing that I did not like about it, and one thing that I would try not to do as much, is the use of AI voices. Now, don't get me wrong, it is like I've done episodes in the past where, like, it wasn't the Roomies series. I've done a short video where Mr. Daz had to teach Android how to be human. So with that, because it's AI, you can get away with using the AI text-to-speech function. But for a show like this, where Nick's voice is a normal voice, Mr. Daz's voice is a normal voice, and David's voice is a normal voice, to then have an AI put in, it is the case that it just doesn't sound right. And there's a lot of softwares out there, and there's a lot of companies out there that can do AI voices that sound a lot more natural. But even then, to put it in a show like this, it still doesn't sound right. And I'd done an episode for season 2 where Mr. Daz's dad comes into the program, and the original way that I'd done it was that his voice was going to be AI. I found an AI voice that sounded quite natural and I thought would be alright for the show, and I created the first scene with his dad in it, and I hated it because you got 2 natural speakers and then you got a robotic voice, and it just didn't fit in. So I have used AI since. Like there's a few scenes where Mr. Daz has to go speak to a doctor, and because he only says a couple of words here and there, I kind of got away with using the AI voice in that, even though it's still something that plays on my mind that I didn't really want to use it, but I got away with it. But that's why for season 2, when I brought in the character of Leah, rather than using an AI voice, I decided, right, I'm going to go on to Fiverr. It doesn't have to be the best voiceover in the world or whatever, but it worked out alright because I like the way Leah is in the show for come season 2, and yeah, I just don't like the AI voices.
Did you see the way she just looked at me? I think she was into me.
Really? You? Why would she want you when she could have me?
Feeling a little bit jealous, are we?
Me? Jealous? Of you? Don't make me laugh.
What, you think I wouldn't be able to date David's mum?
No, definitely not. Why don't you ask him if his nan's single?
Funny, but I'm going to give her a call and ask her out.
And how do you propose on doing that?
Well, she gave me her number. While Mr. Daz and David were talking outside, I had a nice little chat with David's mum and we hit it off. She asked what we had planned for the evening and I told her the truth. A takeaway and The Sound of Music. Who knew that was her favourite movie? She said she would love to come over sometime and watch it and gave me her number. Suck it, Mr. Daz. Hi, Mr. Daz.
So it's as you see from the previous episode that like the previous episode was the promotion, and Nick ended up winning the promotion, so he became office manager. And because of the way Mr. Daz is, and because of the way his personality is, I don't know, I just feel that Nick has to have these little wins in ways of promotions, and Nick gets the girl and things like that really helps, because away from them, it's Mr. Daz that dominates the room. So it just offers that balance to certain things, and with that, it just leaves things open so that I can use the personality of Mr. Daz to show that he doesn't care when he really does, and to get his own way when he knows it's not always that possible. So yeah, so there's a lot of reasons behind why Nick has all these little wins over Mr. Daz when it comes to certain things like women and work and that.
I never stopped talking to you, Nick. I just wasn't interested in the conversation anymore.
Is that because she was more into me than she was you?
Of course not. This is David's mum. It would be very unethical for me to date one of my employees' mothers. It just wouldn't work.
I know, but it's a bit...
One little thing that I try and do with the show is I try and get in things that I enjoy. So we've seen it with the hobby side with Mr. Daz and his West Ham show. I'm a football fan, so I've made sure that I've got the football in, and other things, personal things, like I've done the storyline of At the Races, which was evolved around my granddad, and then like the picture of my nan's in there. Another thing that I wanted to put in was on the TV is obviously if you watched it, it's WWE, it's wrestling, and even though it's gone down a lot in popularity recently and a lot of people, I don't know, I think it's a lot bigger in America, and in America it's the case that the majority of viewers are adults, but for some reason in the UK is that, as I'm 35 years old, and if I say to someone, oh, I still watch WWE, they look at you in a way that, really? That you're a grown-ass man, why are you watching wrestling? But it's just something that I've watched it since I was a kid. I've been watching it for as long as I can remember, and it's something that I don't get swayed by what people think. So if someone thinks that, if I say to someone that I watch WWE and they're like, really, you're 35 years old, I don't really give a damn what people think about me, that whether it's good or bad or anything. That the way I look at it is, if I like something and I like watching something, then I'm going to do it. And the idea of putting this video in is, when this episode was released, like at the time, this storyline going on here with Alexa Bliss was current WWE. So it was just put in as a way of, these are things that I like outside of the show.
You've been paying their rent for how long now? And the first time she meets you, she doesn't even say thank you. She just gives me her number.
Yeah, that's just bloody hilarious.
Yeah, well, I thought so.
Am I annoyed that Nick has a date with David's mum? No, why would I be? She wasn't even that good looking. I bet she's a right dog behind all of that makeup.
Hi, Mr. Daz.
Hi Nick, how was your date with David?
You mean Stacey, his mum?
Yeah, whatever. How was it?
Not what I was expecting, to be honest. When she said she liked the sound of music, I thought we'd end up having a lot more in common, but not really.
Why's that?
Well, I took her to a gastropub and she spent the whole time shouting at the TV and drinking pints of beer.
Oh, really? Why was she shouting at the telly?
Football was on. I suppose she likes football.
Really? I like beer and football.
Maybe she was more suited to you after all.
Hi, Nick. My mum said thank you for the date, but she wouldn't be interested in another one.
Fine by me.
So your mum's into football then, David?
Yeah, she watches it all the time and has a season ticket.
Oh, really? I might give her a call.
Yeah, okay, but you two might clash a bit.
Why's that?
She supports Tottenham.
Me, a West Ham fan, date a Tottenham supporter. Yeah, I'd rather become a monk.
So, with this, that if you're into football, then you'll know that the rivalry between West Ham and Tottenham is one of them rivalries that goes decades back. There are bigger ones like the rivalry between like West Ham and Millwall, but I thought because of having to use the AI voices, I wanted to do it in a way that like the date with Nick went pear-shaped, that it didn't go to plan. And obviously like Mr. Daz knowing that David's mum is into football, that he's then going to get the mentality that, oh, I could ask her out on a date because I'll go to the pub with her and I'll watch football and I'll drink beer with her and we'll hit it off. So I needed to do it in a way that Mr. Daz is then put off completely by it. And in reality, that if a man goes out and he meets a woman and the man's a West Ham supporter and the woman's a Tottenham supporter, it's not going to stop them two people getting together. But there are people out there, especially in the parts of East London where I was brought up, there are men out there that would never ever date a Tottenham supporter. So this, not so much nowadays, like I'm living in the same area now, but it wouldn't happen nowadays. But back in the 90s and early millennium, it would have been the case. So this is why I came up with the idea of, if David's mum's a Tottenham supporter, Mr. Daz is not going to go anywhere near her. Anyway, guys, I'd just like to thank you all for tuning in again, and I will be back tomorrow with another episode look back, which is, I want to say Leaving Home, which is the one where Nick ends up moving out. I could be wrong, I probably am wrong, but trying to just think through the episodes, I do believe it's Leaving Home. But I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you next time.